Okay. So yesterday we completed specialized return. In that we saw mainly the estate and descendant final return and trust tax return, right? The trust return, there was a small calculation related sum which we did. Apart from that, farming income and some small rental property income, those two small topics are left, but we'll do it at the end. I know there will be some topics which will not take 1.5 hours, so there will be some days. If the session is just for 1 hour, we'll quickly take those two topics on that particular day. Okay. So today we are going to cover two topics. One is retirement plan and all the business related credits. So credits, unlike your part one, it's not that important to mug up the limits, the criterias. It's just a simple one line questions which might come from the credits chapter. Okay. But retirement plan, you have to remember the limits. So those who have the old book, or those who people have already made the changes in the book, that's good. But in retirement plan topic, the limits are changed for 2024 tax year. So we are going to understand each and every retirement plans along with the limits, and you can update it in your books also. Okay. So what are the types of retirement plan? Mainly, we are going to have four different types of plan. First one is self-employed pension plan. So if a person is not employed, he's just running his own business. He's not on the wages, not going to receive any payroll, but he's generating revenue either from his own business. He can deposit certain amount in SEP plan. Okay. So what's the limit? Here in this chart, you just have the contribution limits, deduction limit, and what is the last date for contribution. Later on in this chapter, we are going to further understand each and every types of retirement plan in detail. Okay. So again, it's a quick recap. It's not going to be much detail, but yes, it's going to be very much helpful for your exams. So self-employment pension plan, you can contribute maximum up to $69,000 or 25% of the participants compensation. Compensation here, if it's a self-employed, you need to check whatever revenue they are going to generate from their business. So maximum revenue $345,000 into 25% or 69,000, or whatever is their actual compensation. They might be earning less than that also. So whatever is their actual compensation into 25%, that or 69,000, whichever is lower, will be considered as your contribution limit. You can contribute more than that, but your deduction will be limited maximum up to 25% of the participants compensation. Okay. So even if you're working on a payroll basis, you're working to generate a revenue through wage income, still they have some employers will still give them the option to go on a SEP basis, self-employed pension plan. They can ask them to if they want, they can keep those employees on SEP plan, or they can keep them on simple IRA or simple 401k. There are different plans, right? So in that case, the compensation definition will be whatever revenue they are receiving from that employer multiply by 25%. That's the maximum contribution amount they can contribute. But deduction is limited to only 25%. When is the last date for contribution? For the employer, you have to think from the employer's perspective. Okay, when you are learning any topic in the part 2, think from the employer's perspective. So it will always be the last date of the employer's return. So let's say if they are going to file a S corp return or a C corp return or a partnership return, you need to make sure they are filing they are making the contribution till the date of filing the tax return, or if they are extending the return, then till the extended deadline they can do the contribution in the respective IRA account. Okay. When you're going to set up the plan, anytime before the due date of um, the employer return, set up the plan in the sense like you can maximum make the contribution till due date, but the plan needs to be set up all the employees, or let's say you yourself should get enrolled in that plan before the due date of the return. Okay, anytime before the due date of the return plus extension. And here it's like till the due date of the return you can make the contribution. Okay, the limits for 2024 is $69,000 contribution limit for SEP plan. Now let's understand the simple IRA and simple 401k. Simple word means what? It's a savings incentive match plan. Match plan means employee plus employer both are going to contribute certain percentage of their payroll. Okay, so let's understand what employee will be contributing, what employer will be contributing to the IRA. I hope everyone knows what is retirement account. Okay, a retirement plan, this we have already done in the regular class, so I'm just doing a quick recap on this topic. So employees are allowed to do a contribution of up to $16,000, plus they are also allowed to do an extra contribution of 3,500 if their age is more than 50. Okay, it should be more than 50. Exact 50 years age will not work, it should be at 51 or more. Then they'll get an extra catch up contribution of 3,500. So if, for example, employee is working for an employer, that employee can do out of his pocket contribution of $16,000 in simple IRA or simple 401k. Okay, got it, guys? In case of employer's contribution, so what employer is going to do? Employer has one option, that is either 3% of the employee's salary or whatever is the employee's compensation, okay, or fixed 2% of the compensation. Okay, so this 3% will be considered as a matching incentive plan. Means employee, if employee is not agreeing to go for a fixed amount deduction, employee will ask the employer to deduct 1% or 2% or 3%, something, some variable percentage he can decide. Okay, and employer is going to match the employee's contribution. Got it, guys? But it should be 3% or less than 3%. Okay, or they can decide to do a fixed 2%. So the employer is going to deposit fixed 2%. They are not going to do any matching, it's a fixed 2% of the compensation. Maximum, see here, it's as it is mentioned, maximum 3% for in case of a matching contribution. Non-elective deferral will be 2% as a fixed. Means you're not going to match employees percentage, you are just going to do a fixed 2%. Non-elective means not matching, you're not matching the employees contribution. Okay, so that's the employer's contribution allowed in case of simple IRA, simple 401k. Okay, multiple plan, let's say employee is going to participate in more than one employer. It happens that employee is working with two different employers, so two different employers has made some deposit in the IRA plan, 401k plan for the employee. So what will happen? Employee is allowed to contribute maximum 23,000. So instead of 16,100, if a person is going to work for two different employers, they are allowed to do a maximum contribution of 23,000. Okay, and the match plan will remain the same, like up to 3% you can do the matching for the employer. Up to 3% will be matched by the employer, but minimum 1% they have to start at least, because to participate into simple match plan, minimum 1% should be the matching percentage of the salary of the compensation, which can go maximum up to 3%. Okay, next is you have to maintain this account for maximum 2 years out of 5 years, right? So we might, like you guys might have seen that in the individual topic, in individual IRA topic, you will have to pay the penalties if you withdraw it before 2 years. Okay, so this was about contribution limit. Now let's talk about the deduction. Uh, how much deduction you're going to get? Because what do you mean by deduction? In case of an employers, you are going to reduce whatever you have paid for the employees in your profit and loss as an expense, employee benefit expenses, right? So employee can get a deduction in their own personal return. Okay, but employer can take a deduction in the profit and loss account as an expense. So you have to understand from the employer's perspective it's important. Whatever contribution you are going to make, exactly same deduction is allowed. Okay, there's no changes. Same way for employee also, whatever contribution employee is going to make out of their pocket, same deduction they are going to take. The only difference is um, they are going to show it in the 1040 return, but here employer needs to mention it in the profit and loss as an employee benefit expenses, and they will take exact the same amount of deduction for the as an expense in the profit and loss. Okay, same way in case of a multiple plan, employee is allowed to contribute 23,000, employee is allowed to take a reduction of up to 23,000 as an expense, not as an expense in their 1040 on schedule 1 they will get as an reduction. Okay, now what is the deadline, what's the due date to do this contribution? Last date of contribution, it's the salary reduction whenever your salary is being paid. Okay, whenever the compensation is being paid within 30 days from the end of that month. Let's say the compensation is paid on 2nd of next month, so the next month will end like next 30 days you have to check. This is the due date to make the contribution. In simple IRS, simple 401k, it's not the due date of employer's tax return. You have to make the contribution along with every payroll, then only the simple match plan will work, right? So it's like employee is going to contribute plus employer is going to contribute a certain percentage of their payroll, right? So that's the reason why in case of simple IRA 401k, always you have to deposit the contribution amount within 30 days of your salary date. Okay, even like matching non-elective deferral contribution, here in case of this too it will be due date of your employer's return. Matching non-elective deferral contribution, it will be due date of the employer's return. But ideally, like in practical life, they usually, as and when they run the payroll, they deposit that certain amount every time to the retirement account along with the payroll, like when the payroll is run. Okay, so just you need to remember the differentiation between SCP, Simple IRA, 401k, and the last plan which we are going to take right now. Okay, so if you guys have any question, just put it in the chat box. As I mentioned, any doubts, anything which you're not able to understand that. Okay. When you are going to set up this whole plan, it can be any time between January to October. If employee is joined after October, then as soon as possible, you can just enroll that employee into the retirement plan. Okay. So salary reduction, this thing is clear, I hope. And what are the limits? You should remember the limits for this topic. And the good thing is whatever you are contributing, exact same deduction you're going to get. Here, see here, it was like up to 79,000 you are able to contribute, but maximum deduction allowed was only 25% of the participants' compensation. Okay. Next is qualified plan. So what are the qualified plan? These are also a deductible plan. It's not a saving incentive match plan. Means employer is going to contribute either a certain percentage of the profit or a fixed amount. Okay, that's why we call it as a 401k, a simple qualified plan. You cannot use the word self and saving incentive match plan. It's a qualified 401k plan. So it will be bifurcated into two categories. One is defined contribution, second is defined benefit. Defined contribution means what? On the very first day when the employee enrolls in the plan, they either enroll for defined contribution, means the contribution amount is pre-decided that every month the employer is going to contribute a certain amount. Either it will be a percentage of the profit or it will be a fixed amount, let's say $2,000, $3,000. So its contributions are pre-decided. Whereas defined benefit plan is what? When the person retires, they start receiving the they start receiving the distribution. So what are the benefits? The benefits which the employee is going to receive after few years or maybe after retirement is pre-decided. That's a defined benefit plan. Okay. So here, first let's understand the contribution limits. Maximum in case of defined contribution, we are going to provide $23,000 as a maximum contribution plus $7,500 if the age is more than 50 years. Okay, so this limit applies to profit sharing plan. There's no fixed amount, but yes, maximum the limit allowed is up to 23,000. But if you're going to do a fixed contribution, means money purchase pension plan. This word is money purchase pension plan, where a fixed amount should be contributed even if there is no profit. Still, the employer will have to pay you something in retirement account. That's a money purchase pension plan. But if I talk about profit sharing plan, if even if there's no profit, even if there are losses, they have to give a certain you know percentage. Sorry, if they are not having any profits or anything, they are not going to give you any uh contribution to the retirement account. But if it's a money purchase plan, it's always fixed. It doesn't matter you're earning revenues, you're generating profits or losses. Okay, so the limit for money purchase pension plan will be $69,000, which we saw here. It's exactly the SEP plan limits. Okay, or here it's 100% of the compensation, whichever is lower. Okay, now from the contribution, you in both the plans, whether it's a profit sharing, whether it's a money purchase plan, both the case you are allowed to take a deduction. Being an employer, you are allowed to take a deduction of up to 25% of all participants compensation. Maximum compensation is 345,000. Okay. Okay, so there is one question. 69,000 or 100% of participants compensation, whichever is lower, or 23. No, Krishna, it's not the same thing. This is for money purchase pension plan, and this is for profit sharing plan. Okay, so you can just note it down somewhere in the book, in your book. Like it's not or option. It's this is for different plan, this is for different two. Okay, but in both the plans, you can take a maximum deduction of only up to 25% of the participants compensation, and maximum allowed is 345,000 plus any elective deferral is made. Elective deferral means if you're going to make any compensation which is going to match, like which is going to be a certain percentage of the compensation. Okay, so elective deferral is simply means saving incentive match plan. That's the same concept. If you're going to do a elective means matching plan, non-elective means it's not a matching plan. Okay, so what you're going to do is like what, let's say employee is going to deposit certain amount, and you have just randomly, you have just agreed, you have contracted in your employment agreement that we are also going to deposit 1% or 2% of your compensation. It cannot exceed 3%. Okay, so that plus apart from that, if you're going to deposit in the profit sharing or money purchase pension plan, that too will be limited maximum up to 25% of the participants compensation, plus whatever elective deferral you have is selected to make the deposit. Okay, so contribution plus like whatever is the reduction you have, like it's mentioned over here, when you have to do this contribution. So elective deferral, due date of the employer return plus extensions if any, and employer contribution needs to be done, either it's a money purchase or a profit sharing. It needs to be done till the due date of the employer return. So in simple words, all the contributions made to 401k qualified plan should be deposited to the retirement account till the date of the employer's return. Okay, so those who are from from India, I will give you a small linkage over here. For example, your employer is deducting a provident fund, okay, or anything they are deducting in the form of a pension. So you will see that provident fund balance might get updated at the end of the year, or as and when the employer deposits. Maybe let's say they have the policy of the quarterly deposits, right? So you can just remember like that, this retirement account is just a just like a provident fund. It will be utilized by the employee at the end of the year. The only difference is here we have a different types of retirement plans. It's at the discretion of the employee and employer which retirement plan they are going to enroll. Okay. Next is defined benefit plan. Defined benefit, as I mentioned, your benefits are defined and you are going to do a quarterly installments. It will be deposited within 15 days after the end of each quarter. Okay. And how much maximum contribution you can make in the defined benefit plan is where the amount will be 275,000 or 100% of the compensation. And you need to understand that this compensation 100% compensation average 3 years you need to check, and of that up to 100% you can make the contribution. Okay. And how much you're going to take a deduction, it is based on the actuarial assumption. Actual assumption means the actuary will give you the exact amount how much is eligible for the deduction. Okay. Again, the step, like when you're going to set up the whole plan will be at the end of the tax year. Okay. Next is there are some prohibitions which you cannot do from the retirement account. Maximum amount that the plan permits as a loan will be $10,000. From this plan, you can take a maximum loan amount of $10,000 or 50% of the vested account balance, whatever account balance you have, into 50%. Maximum amount that plan from that plan you can take it as a loan. Else, it's not allowed. Over and above this, it's not allowed. Next is the loan amount should be up to 50,000 and it should be repaid within 5 years. If it's not repaid within 5 years, they will consider that you have taken a distribution from that account and they will apply some penalties on early withdrawals and all. Okay. Next is prohibited transaction between the plan and taxpayer, beneficiary, disqualified person. Any disqualified person, the definition of disqualified person is given over here. Anyone who is a fiduciary or is related person providing the services to the plan, any employer who is taking the employment retirement act services from that particular entity. So that employer is also considered as a disqualified person. Employees organization, then employer plus employee organization, direct or indirectly, who is the owner of 50%, member or the family of the above, or officer director who is owning uh, more than 10% shareholding, or highly compensated employee and more than 10% partner is there, they will be considered as a disqualified person. If you're a disqualified person, you cannot do following transactions with the taxpayer, between the taxpayer and the disqualified person. You will not enter into any transfer or use of the plan income. Plan income means your retirement contribution amount cannot be used for the benefit of the disqualified person. You are as like an act of the fiduciary that deals with the plan income or asset in his own interest. You cannot use this asset means what? Retirement account balance. You cannot use it for the own interest. Receipt of consideration of fiduciary in his own account. Okay, they cannot receive the income directly in their own account. So whenever you are going to contribute, it needs to be deposited in the direct retirement account. The fiduciary cannot take the deposit in their own name and then transfer it to the retirement account. So it needs to be directly in the retirement account, not through fiduciary's bank account. Receiving unreasonable compensation for managing plan. So when you're going to receive unreasonable, let's say the salary of the plan manager is $20,000, and because he's taking care of your plan very well, he's investing it properly, he is generating revenue very well, he might he might ask you for some extra compensation, or being a taxpayer you're paying him some extra compensation. So unreasonable compensation you cannot pay to the plan manager. Any act between the plan and a disqualified person, such like selling or exchange of the leasing property or lending money or extending credits, these things are prohibited between the plan manager, between the taxpayer, or between the disqualified person. Okay, so definition of disqualified person is given over here. Just go through it. What exactly means disqualified person? What happens if you enter into those transactions? Straight away they will charge you 15% penalty, and if it's still not paid, additional 100% of whatever amount is involved. Let's say you have deal in transferring some asset, so whatever is the transaction amount, 100% of it will be charged as a penalty if this 15% you are not paying. Okay. Next is reporting requirements. This is important. There will always be some questions on the form numbers. Annual return needs to be filed by the last day of seventh month, that is 31st July. You have to file two different types of form. So let's see what are this form. Form 5500 SF, which will apply to SF, is mainly used by the small plan holders. Small plan holders means those are who are having less than 100 employees, less than 100 participants. Okay, so all needs to be fulfilled, all needs to be satisfied. First is small plan, means less than 100 participants. Second is exempt from qualified public audit, those organizations who are exempt from qualified public audit. Third one is plan assets, 100% of invested in secure investment. So those plan assets are 100% invested in some secure investment. Whoever is a small plan holder, their plan assets, means the retirement money, the money is properly invested in secure investment. No employer securities, and not a multiple employer plan. It's not a multiple employer plan, means two three different employers are going to contribute for one employee. It's not a multiple employer plan. If this all things are satisfied, the employer, okay, please understand, it's a part two corporations. You have to think from the employer's perspective. Employer will have to file form 5500 SF till 31st July. Okay, now what happens if a person is only one participant plan is there? Okay, only the owners are there, only the partners are the part of that plan, and the total asset, this is even smaller than this, the total asset are less than 25 to 50,000, then they have to file annually. This is an annual return. Okay, only in the final plan year, means finally the whole plan will be, the whole amount will get distributed to all the owners, all the partners, whoever are the plan participants. In that year, one return they have to file annually, that is form 5500 EZ. Okay, annually, and SF is always like it's every year you have to report it till 31st July. Got it, guys? Next is 403B plan. So this is a kind of a plan which will be used by the government entities. So government entities like let's say employees of a public school, tax exempt organization, and certain ministers, the church ministers. Okay, so their employees, for them, they are going to contribute into 403B plan. Only the employer, here the plan is like only employer is going to contribute, employee is not allowed to contribute into 403B plan. So only the employer can set up a 403B plan. Eligible employees, sorry, they are only allowed to set up, not contribution. Employer are only allowed to set up the 403B plan because it's a government plan. So obviously government is going to set up this 403B plan. Eligible employees are what are the eligible employees? Employees of tax exempt organization, employees of public school, employee of corporate hospital services, any civilian faculty and staff of uniformed services. So all the government related employees, all the tax exempt organization employees, those will be considered as an eligible employees. Okay, now, individual accounts in 403B plan, what are the ways in which the individual accounts will be formed in case of 403B? It can be an annuity contract. It can be a custodial account. Okay, custodial account And third one is retirement account, which can be set up for the church employees. So these are the three categories, further three categories in 403b plan. Again, no need to understand it in much detail how it works, and also it will have a different criterias, different different conditions, minimum limit and maximum limit. All those things will be defined by the retirement plan managers or the company, the organization with whom you are maintaining this account. Okay. Now, from tax perspective, your objective to remember is, from the tax perspective, how much maximum you can make the contribution. The maximum contribution the government can make in this retirement account is $69,000 or 100% of the compensation, whichever is lower. Or second thing is elective deferral. So let's say employee is also contributing, so the employee can contribute, but they cannot set up a whole plan. Just like SAP plan is something which you can set up on your own for yourself, self-employed pension plan, right? So just like that, 403 no one can set up for their own self, but yes, they can do some contribution, and employer can match that contribution by making elective deferral contributions of up to $23,000. Okay. Maximum 23,000 plus an extra 7,500 is allowed if the age is more than, or yes, more than 50 years. Okay. 403b is very simple. It's like just three things you need to remember. What are the eligible employees? What is the limit which you can contribute? And third is this thing, that it can only be set up by the government employer, not the employee. Okay. Next is simple plan. A simple plan, we already saw the limits. Now let's understand what a simple plan. The contribution deadline is 30th after the end of the month. When you receive the salary within next 30 days, they need to, employer has deducted the retirement amount, right? The contribution amount, sorry. Now they have to deposit it within next 30 days. Okay. Simple plan can be of two categories: simple IRA and simple 401k. Saving incentive match plan, eligible employees will be any employee who has received up to $5,000 during 2 years plus current year. Minimum $5,000 if they have received during the 2 years plus current year, prior 2 years plus current year. Now, employer is going to set up this plan if they are having less than 100 employees. It's a kind of a small plan. Okay, small for small entities, up to 100 employees if they have, plus the compensation is more than $5,000. Okay. Employee can choose to make a salary reduction. So from every payroll, every paycheck, they are going to set aside certain amount. So employee can choose that. Employee can ask the employer that along with your contribution, just deduct 2% from my payroll. Okay. So employee's contribution plus employer will also contribute either the matching exactly the 2%, or he can decide certain some other percentage. He can decide to just do a contribution of only 1%, non-elective difference, or a matching contribution. Next is, if they are going to withdraw, the employee is going to withdraw this balance anytime within 2 years from the formation of this account, they are liable for 25% penalty on that withdrawal. Okay. It doesn't matter what is the age, but the limit here is 2 years from the date of formation. You should not withdraw any amount from your retirement account. Okay. Next is establish a simple plan. It can be done at any date between first 10 days of the year. If someone is a new employer, okay, and they are just forming the business after 10th Jan, they can set up after 10th Jan. It comes into existence after 10th Jan. Okay, if they are forming it on this date, they can make the contribution. They can consider they are allowed to take the deduction for that particular tax year from 1st Jan. So it's very simple. Like from the date on which you establish the plan, it will be effective from that date, and you are able to take the deductions. You are able to make the contributions from that establishment date. Okay, you need to notify employer need to notify to the employee that they have the opportunity to make fixed deduction from their paycheck to the retirement account. So employees opportunity to make or change the choice, whatever percentage they can select, or whatever employer is going to contribute, they need to tell the method to the employee, summary description about the plan in which they are going to enroll that employee, and a written notice about the balance transfer. So whenever they are going to transfer, let's say one employee is changing their job. So if they are going to transfer their balance from previous employee to the new employee, the previous employer to the new employer, they are going to give a written notice about the balance transfer. Okay. And this notification will also be given by the employer to the employee regarding these four things. Next is election period. You have to elect which retirement account you have created between 2nd November to 31st December. That is 60 days prior to 1st Jan. Okay. Before that, you have to make an election. You have to enroll your employees. Then only you will be able to take a deduction for this tax year. Let's say this is 2024. So then only you'll able to take a deduction when you file your 2025 tax return. If your employees are not enrolled till this date somewhere, or at least before this date, maximum till the end of the year, your employees should be enrolled in the retirement plan. If they are not enrolled, and let's say you're enrolling it somewhere in January, it comes under the next tax year. You'll get the deduction, but in the next tax year, not in current year. Okay. What is the form which you're going to file? Form 5304 simple plan allows each plan participant to choose their own financial institution. They can select their own financial institution by informing it through 5304 plan. And 5305 form is like employer requires initial designated financial institution. Okay, so these are the two forms, not that much important, but yes, you can remember. Whatever employer is going to designate the names of the institutions, they are going to give it on the 5305 form. But the selection of the financial institution will be done by the employee by using 5304 form. Okay, so this was about the simple plan. Now let's understand SEP IRS. SEP IRA is something which can be created either by self-employed, or if an individual wants to create their own SEP IRA plan, they can create their SEP IRA plan. So it can be either a traditional, it can only be traditional, not either. Okay. So I think this we did in some previous class. Okay, let's keep it like this. So whatever, yes, it can be only in the form of traditional. It cannot be a Roth IRA. So SCP IRA is not like your 1040 traditional 1040 Roth. That's totally different. The criterias should not be like a Roth IRA if you form a SCP IRA. That means it should be deductible and it should be taxable. That's what we call as a traditional IRA. Roth IRA is what? Non-deductible, non-taxable. Okay. So employee who owns and controls their own business. Employer can contribute to the financial institution who maintains the SEP IRA plan. Okay, so employee can do their own contribution, or on the behalf of employee, the employer who is running their own business, some small Schedule C businesses there, for example, they can do the contribution for their employees. Okay, we'll see the eligible employees and what's the maximum criteria. Establishment of the plan up to the due date of filing the tax return, it has to be in the written format. There will be a written agreement between the plan manager and the individual person. Also, if it's between the employee employer, there has to be a written agreement. Each eligible employee must receive the information that you are eligible for SEP IRA and can set up for each eligible employee. The employer can set up it for each eligible employee, but the due date to set up is still the due date of the tax return of the employer. Now, who are the eligible employees? Less restrictive requirement. It's not mandatory, but it's the requirement that employees who is having the age of more than 21 plus, who has worked for at least 3 years out of 5 years, and whose minimum compensation is up to $750 minimum compensation. Okay, so these three conditions, any of this should be fulfilled to be an eligible employee to enroll into SAP IRA plan. How much maximum contribution you can make is 69,000 or 25% of compensation when being an employee if you're doing a contribution. Being a self-employed, if you're doing a contribution, being a self-employed, a small calculation you have to do is take all your net profit, reduce your self-employment taxes, the 50% of your self-employment taxes, which anyways you're going to get a deduction because on Schedule C, those who have done part one, they might be able to remember that topic. Whatever business income you're going to earn on Schedule C, you have to pay the self-employment tax. But the good part is 50% of that self-employment taxes are allowed as a deduction on your Schedule 1. Okay. So deductible part you have to reduce. Whatever is remaining, assume that this already includes your 25% compensation, the 25% eligible amount. So this is your 125 times. So what will be your 25%? Just you need to do an inclusive calculation. I'm not going to do any calculation right now. This we have done already in the regular class, but yes, whatever is your amount which you're going to calculate, the 25% of compensation means if you're running a business, it needs to be inclusive of the amount. Okay, so just do a reverse calculation, and that much amount of contribution you are allowed to make into self-employed pension plan. You can make more than that, but maximum deduction is allowable only up to 25% of your compensation. Okay. So this was about your SEP IRA. If you guys have any question, put it in the chat box. For those people who are watching the recorded videos, just put it in the comment box. Any question, anything, we can get back to you as a reply in that comment. Anything which you have, which you want to ask. Okay. In retirement plan, I think this is much all of it. And from exam perspective, for all the four types of retirement plan, you should remember the limits. Ideally, I don't ask you to remember the limits, but yes, retirement plan, it's good to remember the limits, how much you can contribute, how much is the distribution, what's the deadline to make the contribution. It can be somewhere it's up to the due date of filing tax return, somewhere it's the up to the end of the year. Okay. So now the next topic, which for today we are going to take, is your business credits. So let's quickly complete that. And in part two, there are not almost like everything is same as compared to previous year. So don't worry even if you have done the regular classes as per prior years recording or anything like that. um you just need to focus on the concept clarity and how the deductions, how the calculation part takes place in case of business property transaction topic, then S corporation, then C corporation partnership. These four chapter are most important for part 2. When we are going to do this 4 chapters, I'll give you some examples while explaining so you can remember it. Okay, it's already there in summary book. There are a lot of examples. Okay, let's do general business credits. This credits, you don't have to mug up, just understand that if you're going to do certain activities, you are eligible for the credits. These are the criteria. There are no limits mentioned here because all the limits, because in all of these credits there are no limits mentioned. Wherever it's there, we have mentioned it in the summary book. Okay. So first one is alternate fuel vehicle refueling property credit. Whatever cost you have incurred for any qualified fuel vehicle refueling property which is placed in service during the tax year, whatever cost, there is no limit. Anything which you have purchased which is falling under, you have to always use the vehicle identification number on the IRS website while filing the tax return to verify that whether it's a qualified fuel vehicle or not. If yes, then yes, fill out the form. 3500 form is the common form for all general business credits, and just mention the cost of the qualified vehicle. Next is alternate motor vehicle credit. So maximum tentative credit. Alternate motor vehicle credit is like its maximum or tentative credit is based on the year, make, model, and the type of new qualifying alternate motor vehicle purchased. Whatever vehicle you are purchasing, based on that, see, this all credits will be changed in the next year. Many amendments are coming right now in the tax laws, but yes, for your exams till Feb 2026 you have to remember these rules. So maximum tentative credit will be based on what year, the model you are buying, the year, the model number, and the type of new qualifying alternate motor vehicle purchased, which may be a qualified fuel cell vehicle or a qualified plug-in electric drive motor vehicle. Again, you have to put the VIN number, and they will ask you for the cost of the vehicle. They will ask you for the year, make, model, and all. Mainly, they'll not ask the year, they'll just ask the name of the vehicle and the vehicle identification number on the IRS website. And there you can identify whether the vehicle which you have purchased is it eligible for the credit or not. Now there can be two types of vehicle. One is e-vehicle you are purchasing, electric vehicle, or one is like which is running through fuel. Okay, it's a normal vehicle, fuel related vehicle. So qualified fuel cell vehicle is your normal vehicle, or if you are purchasing a electric vehicle. Now please understand, all these credits which we are going to do is from the business perspective, that has to be used in your business, right? Second thing you should understand, like there will be few credits which will be overlapping, so it's up to the discretion of the tax preparer which is the best option, or which is the highest credit which they can get to their clients while filing the tax return. So it's not like every credits will apply and you can take two three credits together. Only one credit, eligible credit, will be allowed to be taken on a one vehicle. Okay. Then biodiesel and renewable diesel fuel credit. So this will apply to some manufacturing companies who are going to use renewable diesels for running their equipments, or they are using specifically this type of fuel for reducing some cost. Okay, so the credit applies to certain fuels sold or used in the business. If it's used in the business, or you're just generating, you might be in some chemical related products or some mineral related business, but because your main product is not a renewable diesel fuel, you are going to sell it in the market. Okay, that's not your main product, just a byproduct, and you're selling it in the market, selling it to some other wholesalers. So if you are in the business of selling this renewable diesel fuel, or you are using it in the business, the amount of credit the taxpayer can claim depends on the type of eligible fuel involved and how many gallons you are going to sell it in the market, or how many gallons you have used. Okay, again, there's no limit. It's just like no need to remember the limits. Mainly for the part 2, they are not going to focus, they're not going to straight away ask what's the limit for biodiesel or renewable diesel fuel credit. Okay, they are just going to focus on how you guys are going to remember the concepts or eligibility criterias. Okay, so yes, next is biofuel producer credit. Those who are going to produce, means they are the manufacturer of the biofuel, they will get the credit based on the number of gallons and type of fuel involved. Next is carbon oxide sequestration credit. That's related to something which a specific carbon oxide is been generated because of what captured at the qualified facility and disposed of in secure geological storage. So it's something, a waste product, right? Because you're disposing it in a proper way that doesn't affect the environment, then you will get this credit. So the credit is for carbon oxide which is captured at a qualified facility, because your manufacturing process is such that it is going to generate a carbon oxide, and that is being captured in the manufacturing unit, and it has been disposed at a secure area, designated areas. Okay, so in a qualified enhanced oil and natural gas recovery project, mainly this thing happens in oil, gas related projects, right? Next is credit for employer social security and Medicare taxes paid on certain employee tips. So if you're going to not report some tips from employees perspective, I'm talking about right now, you might have seen that in the part 1, up to $20, then you don't have to report it, right? So from the employer's perspective, the credit will be allowed is generally equal to employer's portion of social security and Medicare taxes paid on tips. So let's say the employee is going to have a tip income of up to $25 per month. So can I say this is more than $20? So what employee will have to do? Employee will have to report it to the employer. So when they report it to the employer, employer will have to pay Medicare and social security taxes for both employee portion and employer's portion. They will deduct this taxes from the employee's income, and they will have to pay out of the pocket. So what the employer says that it's the tip income which we are not paying to the employee, right? It is being paid by the customers. Why we should bear the Medicare and social security? That's why whatever is the tip income which is directly paid by the customers to the employees, we are not eligible, we should not be liable to pay the Medicare social security, so they will get the credit for that portion, for employer's portion. Okay. Next is credit for employer differential wages payment. So this is mainly for the small businesses with an incentive to continue to pay wages to an employee performing services on active duty in uniform service of United States for the period of more than 30 days. So this credit is applicable to small businesses who are um, mainly not a private business. Okay, it's just like certain institutions, certain organizations which are formed, and the main business activities of that business is to provide some services to the general public. Okay, so again I'll explain it. This line is, this credit provides certain small businesses with incentive to continue. So we are going to provide them credit. Why? Because they are going to pay constantly, they are going to pay the wages to the employees. What the employees are performing, they kind of a tax exempt, kind of a non-profit activities. They are performing services on active duty in uniform services to of the US for the period of more than 30 days. For more than 30 days, constantly they are providing some services, but they are not going to provide the services free of cost, right? So there are some organizations, institution who are going to pay the wages to them. So to give the small businesses an incentive that they will constantly keep paying the wages to those employees, they will give some credits. Whatever is the salary wage amount, that exactly will be allowed as a credit. So they'll also get a deduction in the P&L. They'll also get a credit for this thing. Okay. Next is, yes, here is some small limits are there. Credit for employer provided childcare facility, maximum up to 150,000 you can provide for the childcare facility, and maximum 150,000 is allowed as a credit for the employer. Now this is for the total investment. Let's say there are 5 employees, total 5, in for all the 5 employees you are providing the childcare facility, so take a total of it, maximum 150,000 you can take it as a credit. And the second is 25% of the qualified childcare facility plus 10% of the qualified childcare resources. So this is the maximum, and this is the or option. You can just write it down somewhere here, or. Okay. Qualified childcare facility. Some employers, what they do, they are going to deposit the amount directly to the childcare facility. So take 25% of that deposited amount. The employer is going to pay to facility plus 10% of the resources which are being used. So let's say the books and supplies, whatever material they are going to, for whatever material cost they are going to pay. Okay, childcare facility, I hope everyone knows. So when employer is going to pay for their employees, child's, some childcare related facility, maximum 150,000 is allowed, and you need to compare it maximum up to 25% of whatever they are paying plus 10% for additional resources. Okay. Credit for increasing research activities. So any businesses who are in the research related business, so regular credit allowed is 20%. So let's say first year you're doing a research, you have invested, you need to check the investment amount. First year you have done the investment of 100,000. Next year you have done additional investment of 50,000. So can I say in your balance sheet you will see like total investment of 150,000 you have done as a research activity. So this additional, every year whatever additional research activities you are increasing, you are adding in your business, you have to take 20% of that research activity additional amount. So 50,000 into 20% will be allowed as a credit for increasing the research activities. Okay. And this is allowed for all kind of business, including and mainly like in practical life you will see this kind of credits are always there in the energy research related business, right? Next is, yes, credit for small employer health insurance. This is important. Always there's a question on this. So the credit allowed will be, so what exactly is a small employer health insurance? When employer is going to pay insurance premium for on behalf of employee. So yes, employer is allowed to take a credit, but there are some criteria. Credit will be allowed up to how much amount? 50% of the premium paid by the employer. Whatever employer is going to pay to the insurance company, the premium amount, 50% of that, and the employer should fulfill certain condition. What is the condition is they must have few less than 25 full-time employees, FTEs, less than full-time employees, 25 should be there for the tax year. And they should be paying an average annual wage of up to 62,000 per FTE, which was for 2023. It is, just give me a minute, guys. Just this one small update. For 2024, you should remember this limit, okay? So, okay, this is credit for small employers. So this 62,000 is for per employee, and which has been changed to, okay, it's 64,800. Okay, for 2024 it is 64,800. Okay, just remember this. And this annual wages should be less than 64,800. It's not it's not more than this. So remember the criteria over here. There will be certain, I don't know, one line question or something will be there from this topic. So 64,800 is the annual wages. Up to that much amount if the employee is going to receive, plus the employer is have hired only up to 25 full-time employees, the employer must be required under a qualifying arrangement to pay a uniform percentage, means which should not be less than 50%, means he is paying for the insurance premium for the employees, which should not be less than 50% of the total cost, at least 50% of the premium cost. Let's say the insurance premium is $1,000. They might have agreed with the employee that okay, your insurance cost is $1,000, I will be paying $600, and remaining $400 you can pay and insure yourself, right? So it should be at least 50% of the premium cost. So only this three condition you should remember. One is up to 25 full-time employees. Second is the wages, average wages for that particular year should be 64,800, and this keep on changing every year. Second and the last condition is the premium cost. You should at least cover 50%. And how much credit you are going to get? 50% of the premium. Okay. Next is if you guys have any question, just put it in this. Tax exempt organization. Yes, Krishna, I'll try to complete it. Let's just complete the business credit topic first, and then we'll see that if still there's some time, then we can complete it today, or we can take it in the next class. That's fine. It's just a two-page topic. We'll take that exempt organization. Okay. Credit for small employer pension plan startup cost. So when you are a small employer who is going to provide pension plans for your employees, okay, just two three employees are there, but to set up that plan, whatever cost you have incurred, that can be considered, that can be allowed as a credit. Okay, so here this credit applies to pension plan startup cost of a new qualified defined benefit or defined contribution. Right now only we saw, right, defined benefit, defined contribution. If this two plan you are setting up for your employees, or a pension plan you are setting up for your employees, including 401k plan, simple plan, or simplified employee pension, the credit is going to cover all the cost, administration related, all the cost which you have paid to set up this plan. Okay, and it can be like you're educating your employees which plan is helpful for which plan is going to provide what benefits. You're just educating your employees. That are all administrative costs which are going to pay at initial stage while setting up the plan. The credit is equal to 50% of the startup cost paid or incurred during the year. Okay, now here one more limit is there. It This 50% will be maximum limited up to 5,000 per year. So the credit is available for each first 3 years of the plan. Whenever you set up this plan, retirement plans, so first 3 years it is allowed, and the taxpayer may choose to start claiming the credit in the tax year prior to the tax year in which plan becomes effective. Let's say here the plan becomes effective on this, so from this year you can start claiming the credit, and it is allowed for the first 3 years of setting up the plan. Each of the first 3 years, each year 5,000, 5,000, 5,000, and or 50%, maximum 50% of the startup cost which you have incurred. Okay. Next is disabled excess credit. So it can happen that there are some small businesses and they have some employees who are disabled. Because of that disability, you have to make some arrangements. You Because someone is, let's say, handicapped, and to facilitate some proper facilities that they can work from the office. They can, the infrastructure they have changed a little bit, that makes them comfortable. So for that cost, whatever you are incurring to provide the proper access to the person who is disabled, the credit will be 50% of first 10,000. Whatever cost you have incurred, up to 50% will be allowed. Over and above 50%, over and above 10,000, you are not allowed to take any credit. Okay. Distilled spirits credit. So the credit is available to distillers and importers of distilled spirit and eligible wholesalers of distilled spirits. There's no limit given over here, but yes, from exam perspective, it's not that much important. So I am going to, at the end of this business credit topic, I'll give you some important credits which are definitely are focused by the examiner, are going to be asked in the exam. But yes, distilled spirit credit is someone is going to import it, or someone is a wholesaler of a distilled spirit, they can get a credit for they are just promoting this particular product. That's why they have given the credits for importing it, or distributor of the distilled spirit. Okay, now this important empowerment zone employment credit. The credit is for the employers who have employees in and engage in business in an empowerment zone, means they are promoting new employment. Okay, and the credit allowed is 20%. So let's say if it's 2024, so it's 24, you can take a 20% of the employee's qualified wages, maximum up to 15,000, paid or incurred during the calendar year on behalf of the qualified empowerment zone employees. Okay, so the government is going to designate specific areas which are called as an empowerment zone, and in that empowerment zone, if you are generating some sorry, if you have set up your business and if you have hired some employees from that zone, whatever salary you are paying to those people, up to 20% of their wages, you are allowed to take as a credit. Okay, Then we have an energy efficient home credit. This is also kind of an important where let's say in your home you are installing solar panels, you are saving the electricity. So the credit is available for eligible contractors of certain homes sold for use as a resident. So this is from the contractor's perspective, not from the individual. So let's say being an individual, if I have installed solar panels, I'll get a credit in 1040 return. But the person who is selling that solar panels, or who is converting the whole house into a energy efficient home, that contractors are allowed to take the credit. How much is allowed? The allowable credit is 2000 for each home meeting this criterias, and like the 50% energy efficient standard should be met to get this 2000 credit. And for those that meet 30% energy efficient criteria, the allowable credit will reduce to $1000. Now you will say, like, who is going to decide how much percentage it's fulfilling the criteria, 50%, 30%? It's done by the proper valuer. They will give a proper report that it is, yes, 50% energy efficient house or 30% energy efficient house. Okay. Indian employment credit applies to qualified wages and health insurance cost. Whatever wages you are going to pay or any health insurance cost which you are going to incur for qualified employees, those will be American Indians. Okay. It will be up to 20%. That doesn't mean, like, everyone who's living in India, they'll start applying for the job. They are not going to get any credit for that. It specifically mentioned American Indians, those who are resident over here, those who are living over here, and those the origin, their birth origin is from Indian, or they fulfill the conditions, then the employer will get a credit of 20% of expenses. Expenses will include what? The qualified wages plus health insurance into 20% area. Okay. Investment credit. The investment credit consists of the following: some investments which you have made in rehabilitation or energy or any coal related project or gasification project. So these are some projects in which you might have done some investments. Being a business, okay, being a corporation, you are running a business of energy related coal project or gasification related, minerals related, advanced energy projects, right? Or you might be a partner, or you might be a major investor in these projects. Then you will get a credit based on your amount of investment. Okay. Next is low sulfur diesel fuel production credit. If you're going to do a production, mainly the production of what? Low sulfur diesel, okay, by a qualified small business, the credit is 5 cent for every gallon. No need to remember it, but yes, it's just like, you're generating a diesel which is being approved as a low sulfur diesel, you will get a 5 cent on every gallon as a credit. Okay. Low income housing credit. This credit is generally applicable to new qualified low income buildings which are placed in service after 1986. It's just like, some buildings, some apartments are built for those people with low income. They can easily buy those buildings. Okay. So generally it is taken over a 10 year. Within 10 years you can allocate those credit. This will be applicable to only employers, not the individual person who is buying the house. Okay. They are just getting the benefit to buy the house at the low cost, but this is for the employer who is generating this particular building related services. Okay. New market credit. A credit is for qualified equity investment made in a qualified community development entities. Primary mission is to serving or producing the investment capital for low income communities or the person. So it's like, they are just having a qualified equity investment for a qualified community development entities. It's they are just creating a new market for the investors. They will get, being a business, they will get this credit. And just remember in part two, like, this is the whole list what the corporates are going to get the credits. It's not important that each and every credits are much to be done in detail. Whatever are important credits, I'm going to mark it at the end of the session, So just bear with me for next few minutes, and then we'll mark with the what are the important credits which you need to understand from the calculation point of view. Okay. Non-conventional source fuel credits, it's allowed as a carry forward only. So when you are not able to utilize the full credit, you can carry it forward. This carry forward credit is allowed for qualified coke or coke gas produced and sold at to an unrelated person. You should not sell it within the subsidiaries or within the related businesses. Unrelated person during the prior tax year and carried over to the current tax year. So let's say in 2024, if you're going to sell this qualified coke or coke gas, you are allowed to take a credit in 2025. It's carry forward to next year only. You cannot take it in the same year. It's allowed in the next year. Orphan drug credit, the credit applies to qualified expenses incurred in testing certain drugs for rare disease and conditions. Mainly, this credit is allowed for the businesses who is in the research activity, and they usually incur some expenses to test the drug. Okay, so they are allowed to take the credit for clinical testing. Whatever expenses they have incurred, up to 50%, you are allowed to take the credit. Qualified railroad track maintenance credit. So this credit applies to certain regional and switching railroads that may be able to claim a credit for expense made to upgrade their railroads. So bridges, roadbeds, or related track structure, it's not the public infrastructure. Okay, it's your internal business related business related infrastructure which you are going to upgrade. In that situation, you are allowed to take a credit of expenses which you have incurred to upgrade the railroad tracks. Okay. Next is renewal community employment credit. This carry forward credit is allowed for employers who had employees in and engage in the business in the renewable community. So this is also again a carry forward, like for which the credit is available during the prior year and carry forward in the current year. Like 2024 will be allowed in 2025. Renewable community employment credit is like you are going to provide, being an employer, you are having an employees who are engaged in business in renewable community. Okay. Next is, yes, renewable electricity, refined coal, and Indian coal production credit. So if you're running a business for selling the electricity, the coal related, or any production which you do in US, being a corporation, you are allowed to take a credit for the just for the production or for the distribution. Work opportunity credit is important when you are going to provide some employment, okay, to the to some unemployed people. So the credit is for qualified first and second year wages paid to the targeted group. Targeted group has been defined by the IRS. Those people who are not able to get the job, or might uh, who might be were arrested in prior years. Now they have a very good records, very good track, but no employer is going to hire someone who was been arrested or who was present. So those people are categorized as a targeted group. Okay, so this credit is for qualified first or second year wages paid to the targeted group, first and second year wages which you're going to pay. In general, the amount of qualified wages that may be taken into account for employees limited to 6,000. Maximum 6,000 you can consider for your credit calculation. You can pay them a number of wages, but it's like for credit calculation, you will take only $6,000 as a wages amount. So this employees have a highly unemployment rate or other special employment needs. The business does not have to be in the empowerment zone, and or it doesn't have to be in renewal community role or a rural renewal county to qualify for this credit. How much you're going to get the credit is 25% in first year, right, of the employees working more than 120 hours but less than 400 hours, plus 40%. It will become 40% if the employee is working more than 400 hours. In second year, this will increase to 50%. Okay, 50% of the qualified second year wages certified as a long term family assistance recipient. There can be a calculation sum on this. So please remember, maximum wages you are going to allow is $6,000, and credit amount is 25% or 40% depending on the hours worked during the year. Okay. Next is Consolidated Appropriations Act extended the work opportunity credit to through December 31st, 2025. So the employees who are considered as a targeted group are defined over here. Okay, the list of 10 categories. You can just go through it. I'm not explaining it in detail, but later in the regular class I'll explain this thing one by one in the details. But since this is summary recap, I'm just going to quick read and go through the targeted group members, and I'll explain whatever is relevant. Okay. So qualified long-term unemployment recipient who is unemployed for a very long term, they are receiving unemployment benefits. They are called as a targeted group. Long-term family assistant recipient, they are unemployed and they are receiving some money, not in the form of salary but in the form of a family assistant. Okay, family assistance, some payment they are received, but not, it's not an unemployment benefit, it's not a salary. Qualified recipient of a temporary assistance for a needy families. Okay. Third, fourth one is qualified veteran, qualified ex-felon. Ex-felon is that one I explained, that someone is imprisoned and then he has been on the good record. So that person is an ex-felon. Designated community resident, that is lives in the empowerment zone. Vocational rehabilitation referral. Summer youth employees, SNAP recipients. SNAP recipient is like they are receiving something, like let's say the prices of some groceries are $100, but they are going to receive it for $80. They are getting some benefits in the day-to-day activities. They are SNAP recipients and SSI recipient. Okay, so these are some few categories of the targeted group. You don't have to mug up or you don't have to remember it very well, but these people, if you have hired them, so you get a work opportunity credit. You're giving them an opportunity to work even though they are falling under any of these 10 categories. Okay. Yes. Next is, let me just mark what are the important credits which you should remember from the exam perspective. So just give me a minute. Okay, carbon, no, this is important. Okay, credit for small employer health insurance premium. This is important. This is not that important, but there was one or two questions. Like in few students have suggested there was a question on this. Then yes, this is important. On this page, every credit is important. This is important. This is not that important, but yeah, empowerment zone, energy efficient credit, then qualified will no. Okay, and last is this. Okay, so work opportunity credit is important. Then we saw energy efficient home credit, then empowerment zone employment, disabled access credit, credit for small employer pension plan, startup cost, then credit for small employers health insurance premium which they are paying like 50% is allowed, credit for employer provided childcare facilities, and credit for employer social security medicare on the tip income. Why employer is going to pay social security and medicare out of their pocket? They're not receiving this tip from directly from employer, it is received from the customers. That's why they will receive a credit on that amount. Okay. So yes, any question guys from the business credits? And we did one more topic was related to retirement plans. Yes. So if you have any question, just put it right now in the chat box, or later on if you come across any question queries, put it in the comments on the YouTube channel where we are going to upload this, like till evening it will be uploaded. Or you are from our regular batch, put it in our WhatsApp group, whatever questions you have. Okay. So in tomorrow's session, I think tomorrow, what's the topic? Let me check. Tomorrow's session, we'll continue with the loss limitation. It's again 15-20 minutes topic, which is very important. How the basis rule, at risk rule, and passive activity loss limitation and excess business loss rule will applied. This we will revise, and then we'll start with a new topic which is there in our schedule. Don't worry, in the specialized written, whatever topic is left, the tax exempt organization and the farming income, that we will take it at the last, as soon as we get the chance, when the sessions are of lesser hours, 1 hour on that day, I'll take that two topics. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you so much. And if you have any confusion, any questions, just let me know. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. Bye. Have a good day.